So, Mark chapter 13. Scottish theologian William Barclay once described this chapter as one of the most difficult chapters in the New Testament for a modern reader to understand. Advent starts just a little bit weird with this passage from a chapter that is so deeply out of character with the rest of Mark's Gospel. A chapter that is described commonly as the little apocalypse, a sort of little brother or sister to the book of Revelation. It's hard to read, hard to understand, and hard to preach. Well, thank you very much to the creators of the Revised Common Lectionary, and welcome to Advent. Now, we enlightened 21st century Christians can find apocalyptic literature challenging, disturbing, disconcerting, confusing, uncomfortable. We understandably struggle with passages of Scripture that describe the sun and the moon losing their light, stars falling from the sky, angels, clouds. We can be tempted to hurry through Mark 13, particularly in Advent, lured by the attraction of John the Baptist, a little dose of Gaudete, and of course by Christmas itself. This apocalyptic opening to Advent seems so deeply countercultural and paradoxical. But of course, paradox is fundamental to Advent. This is a time at which we're preparing simultaneously for something that's already happened and for things that have yet to come. In life and in faith, there are times at which we need to be comfortable with paradox, happy to step away from what we regard as clear and certain, and to dwell in the much murkier depths of mystery. And Advent is very much one of those times. We also have to remember that despite the negative overtones that it's picked up, particularly in our nuclear age, the word apocalypse means simply to unveil. In the words of Richard Rohr, apocalyptic literature pulls back the curtain to reveal what is real, what is true, and what is lasting. Apocalypse was never intended to be a synonym for bad news. Christ's triumphant return, whenever it comes, will be a time of joy, the culmination of God's mission to the world, the final victory as the kingdom reigns on earth as it does in heaven. And given the fundamental role that the incarnation plays in that cosmic transformation, it makes a great deal of sense to explore this apocalyptic literature as we enter Advent. It shocks us out of what we take for granted and gives us a chance to reflect again on the true nature of Christ and kingdom. Again, in the words of Richard Rohr, it's not that it's the end of the world, but it helps us imagine the end of the world as we know it. But I don't have to tell you that delving into this mystery is far from straightforward. What are the events that Jesus is referring to in this passage and through the rest of this very challenging chapter? Well, to some extent, we can place Jesus' words in the context of the destruction of the temple in AD 70 by the Roman authorities in response to the great Jewish revolt. Mark's Gospel was likely written in the immediate aftermath of that event. Verse 2 of chapter 13 sees Jesus pointing to the temple and saying, "Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." Much of the rest of the chapter can be seen as a very immediate warning to the disciples that their world was about to be turned upside down, and that as a result they should be prepared. They should keep watch. But at the same time, there is much in chapter 13 that cannot simply be ascribed to that very human, if for the Jewish nation, catastrophic event. There's a great deal that's plainly more cosmic and apocalyptic in nature. And that's the challenging thing, isn't it? Because throughout this chapter, it's so difficult to discern whether Jesus is talking about near-term catastrophe or long-term apocalypse. Now, a theory held by some commentators is that in chapter 13, Mark is purposefully weaving together two different traditions that existed in the early church. Some, perhaps including the Apostle Paul, expected Jesus' return very soon. We might say they held an imminent eschatology. Others, in response to the already longer than expected delay and the death of many of the original eyewitnesses, had begun to cast Jesus' return as the culmination of human history, an event that would occur at the end of time. And we might call that a delayed or future eschatology. And in light of those two perspectives, the theory is that Mark weaved them together in this little apocalypse in Mark 13. To illustrate that, you might like, as a little bit of homework, to try a little experiment. And I'd left some sheets on the table at the back of church for you to pick up and take home that might just help you in that assignment. First, read Mark chapter 13, verses 1 to 2, verse 8, 14 to 22, and then 24 to 30. And you'll find that the text flows smoothly, warning Christians to prepare for an imminent apocalypse. Then, read Mark 13, 3 to 7, 9 to 13, 21 to 23, and 32 to 37. Again, the text flows smoothly, but it offers this time counsel of another sort. Believers need to dig in, to stay faithful and prepare for the long term. The theory is that Mark had these two tracts in his possession, and rather than choose between them, decided to weave them together into the composite text that we now possess. Essentially, Mark's thrust seems to be both that we need to live as though the end is at hand, and to dig in for the long haul, because the timetable is known only to God. So, are we saying that Mark was hedging his bets, unsure of which horse to back? Well, for me, and based on the rest of his gospel, frankly, that doesn't really seem like his style. This weaving together feels very purposeful, a reflection perhaps of what the evangelist recognized was the paradox that the kingdom was both now and not yet. A little earlier in our first reading, we heard the plaintive call of the prophet in our reading from Isaiah, this yearning for God to act decisively. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down, that the mountains would tremble before you. And of course, for Christians, the prophet's prayer receives a resounding response in the incarnation, God's human form in the person of Jesus. But we know that's not all. We watch and we wait. We prepare for the fulfillment of God's mission, the coming of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. It is both a now and a not yet, an inaugurated eschatology, to use the clever words. The kingdom is here, but has not fully broken through. We are watching and waiting, preparing ourselves, preparing our world, preparing humanity. And of course, we're acting decisively as well to bring it to fruition. That, I sense, is the reality that Jesus and Mark are seeking to articulate in chapter 13 of this gospel. Keep watch, says Jesus, 3 times in this short passage, in verses 34, 35, and 37. The Greek word is gregorete, from which, incidentally, the name Gregory derives. Different translations render it as keep watch, or be alert, or stay awake. It's ironic, and I suspect far from coincidental, that Mark uses the same word twice in the very next chapter of his gospel, when Jesus tells the disciples at Gethsemane, "Stay here and keep watch while I pray." Of course, rather than staying awake, they sleep, to his deep disappointment. 3 times Jesus returns, and 3 times they are sleeping. It feels very much like a metaphor, doesn't it? A very purposeful construction by the evangelist to make a very explicit point. Are we awake? Are we watching? Are we waiting? Or are we sleepwalking through life? Are we just going through the motions? Are those around us, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbours, sleeping or watchful? Advent is a time for us to stop sleeping, to wake fully, to pay full, undivided attention to the cosmic change that has both taken place and that is still unfolding around us. It's a time to prepare fully for the wonder that is the incarnation. But it's also a time for us to see the world as God sees it, full of both perfection and imperfection. To recognize that the world isn't as it should be, and to see how it can be so very, very different. It's a time to look for ways in which the kingdom is breaking in around us and to join in and be part of it. And so as we step into this new Advent, and once you've finished your homework, I would encourage you this week to find some quiet space, to simply stop and step away from the hustle and bustle of your daily lives. I would invite you to contemplate the enormity of the cosmic change that God has wrought through creation, through the incarnation. Stay in that place for as long as you feel comfortable. Sense the kingdom as it ripples through time and space. Reflect on how the kingdom is breaking in through this place, through this church, through this community, and through you. What I say to you, I say to everyone: watch. Amen.
I hope you're aware there's going to be Christingle here in about 3/4 of an hour, so celebrating that service of light, and we hope that children will be coming along to join us for that. Next Saturday, there's a tea dance here, 2 till 4. Yep. I know that the last couple have been really, really busy, so hopefully lots of people will come and join us for that. And then on the 17th, so just 2 Sundays away, it's our carol service at 7 o'clock. So please be inviting friends and neighbours to come along and to join that service as we continue to prepare for Christmas. Next Sunday, the services are 9 and 10:45. And then on the 17th, there's just a 10 o'clock service, which will be said with hymns as we prepare for for Advent. It's Advent 3. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything in my head. And then Christmas Eve, of course, is Advent 4. So again, there will be a 10 o'clock service before we launch into our Christmas activities. I just wanted to say that we are back. Paul came and sang on Friday night, so he saw people. I came and made a wreath yesterday, which was great fun, and then we were in the village as the lights were turned on. So we bumped into all sorts of people. Good to see you all. And I can honestly say that we've known virtually nothing that's happened in the life of St Mary's over 3 months. Thanks to Nadine, who told me a couple of things that I really needed to know, but other than that, and I know that you have been really well looked after by her and Matthew and Ian and David and lots of other people. We've had a good time with our family. Our grandsons are growing, and we've had an engagement, so that was wonderful, as Sarah and William are going to get married in September up in Manchester. We've been to Morocco, we've been to Lindisfarne, we've been to Manchester, we've been to Derbyshire, and we've been basing ourselves in Chipping Norton, and able to worship there with the Chase benefice, and being really well looked after by them, but certainly makes us realise how lucky we are here. Nothing else, this lovely warm church. So, but the purpose of my sabbatical, or our sabbatical, was to rest, renew and refresh. And that's what we've done together and separately. And it has been good to have a period of time that's not been dominated by the life of St Mary's. We've not forgotten about you, but you've been sort of over there. And I certainly want to maintain some of that, despite it being December. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to sort of just be with people, find out what's been happening, but slowly. If you've got something you want to share with me, then do please get in touch. And after the new year, then I can be reflecting some of the thinking and what we might be doing. But for now, just be kind and let's enjoy Advent and Christmas.